Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday night Conversationalist Circle. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Bob Warner. I am one of the early stewards of Co-Creators Convergence, and with me is my beloved Noel Marshall, my life partner and life partner. And thank you, Noel, for helping me and allowing me to be host tonight with Becky Suzik. It is such a delight. We've been looking forward to this for months. This is going to be quite a joy, as always, whenever we're spending time with Becky. And what a delightful circle we have with us this evening. We do have a few people here this evening, or that will be watching this later, since we're on Facebook Live and we're also recording. And so they may not know what the Co-Creators Convergence is. So we're going to introduce the Co-Creators Convergence to you with a little video, and then I'm going to give a little more introduction of Becky. So thank you all so much for being here. As I said, Becky Suzik, very special and dear person to us in our life, and we are looking forward to this evening's time in circle with her. In the bio that she put in Facebook, for those of you that didn't have a chance to look at that, it says spider medicine and a 7-year illness led Becky to reimagine a different story for her life and work. She is currently a June 2022 candidate for ministerial ordination in interfaith and interspiritual studies, and she enjoys creating sacred spaces and times for people to reconnect to themselves through practices of sacred kindness, love, compassion, creativity, and care for oneself. But there's so much more about Becky, and so much more that I could say. She believes in the healing power of expressive arts and stories. She is a creative and joy activist, as so many of us know, and her company Joy Fuel is a mixed media force devoted to sharing and promoting kindness, creativity, and joy in and of the world. So it's a delight to be here. On a personal note, Noel and I were blessed to have Becky come into our life through our work, our common work with Unity Earth, the World Unity Week activities, the Up Convergence, and many others. And we got to stand on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial at the end of the Caravan for Unity across the United States and meet Becky in person for the first time then. So we are so blessed to have Becky in our lives. All of you are as well, whether this is the first time you're meeting her or the 100th time you're meeting her. Becky, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We're looking forward to your
Oh,
triad
thank,
of fun you're going to take us through an improv.
oh, thank you so much, Bob and Noel and Magi. I'm so grateful to be here on this journey together. And if for those of you who are in the Zoom room, if you have a candle nearby, we will be lighting a candle at some point. If you have one and would like to do that with me, I'll plant that seed for you now. For those who caught the live stream right when we began, we were looking at the World Population Clock, and I wanted to just share a little bit about this website that perhaps Bob and Noel could put in the chat for those in the Zoom room. But there is a website called Worldometers that is run by an international team of developers, researchers, and volunteers with the goal of making world statistics available in a thought-provoking and time-relevant format. So they have no political or governmental or corporate affiliation. They have no investors or donors, grants, or backers of any type. They are completely independent and self-financed. And so I share that because there isn't, I don't know, there's no way that we can know how many people are truly alive right now, how many people are dying in this moment as they aspire to reflect, and you'll see in my program. But as best as we can guess, these are numbers that we can honor, that are not I guess, invested by anything except curiosity. So I wanted to share that because we'll be revisiting some statistics from that Worldometer, and thank you for placing that in the chat. So it is so wonderful to be here, and I'm grateful to Bob and Noel and Magi for the opportunity to join Co-Creators Convergence again. And I thank you all who are in the Zoom room for coming. And for those of you who are watching on Facebook right now, I believe that if you look where you are watching the video in the description, you should see a Zoom link where you can join us in the Zoom room right now. And you're welcome to join us and jump in the Zoom room because it's a different experience than watching online. There'll be a meeting ID, I believe, there, so you can join us. So I'm going to begin by sharing a different video of my background and just create a space for us to go into nature. Just one moment. This is a sacred place that I'm very privileged to live near in my neighborhood that I visit as often as I can, that I wanted to share with you all as we come into this moment together. I'd like to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to every flower, tree, moth, butterfly, bird, to every stream, river, and each seaside, to the warm breezes and cold snowflakes, to campsite and hearth-bound fires, to the soil. Gratitude for all the ways you have supported, blessed, and taught me of our interconnectedness and dependency on each other. I'm grateful to all I have experienced with, and because of Mother Earth's omnipresence and abundance of gifts and blessings. I'm grateful to all of my teachers, my children and husband, my mentors and circle sisters, my beloved friends, my seminary classmates, my parents, my brother, and all the authors of books and classes where I have discovered different possibilities of self and service. I'm grateful to the dogs who you might hear in the background having a long, cool drink in the kitchen. My dog Mookie. I'm grateful to the dogs who have loved me, for teaching me truly what unconditional love looks like. I honor the ancestors of the land I now live upon here in Raleigh, North Carolina, where once the Catawba, Tuscarora, and Nuseok people lived. I send my love and gratitude into the past to my ancestors and all of our ancestors, upon whose shoulders and decisions we now live in possibility. I send my love and gratitude to my progeny, our future children, humans who shall inherit our world with the decisions and actions we now abide. I extend my love and deep gratitude to everything and everyone in the past, present, and future, informing, shaping, breaking, and remaking my heart and understanding and my actions. I intend to live my life with reverence and appreciation of the vast encounters that have loved and lifted me into this very moment together. May I be guided to love more with less harm to each other and all of Earth's residents, and more intentional use of Earth's gifts that we call resources. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This program, these moments together is offered in 3 parts. Part 1, I called The Pandemic Reveals. Part 2, The Goddess Corona. And Part 3, my personal dance with the Corona goddess. Through personal stories and stories from some of our Earth siblings in the East, to learn about the contagion goddesses, it is my hope that these stories will spark a greater understanding of your own personal ever-becoming story and narrative around your relationship with the pandemic and the coronavirus. I'm going to share my screen, and here we go. Everything happens for a reason that I make up. On Friday, March 6th of 2020, news surfaced to my awareness about a disruptive, highly contagious, and potentially life-threatening illness spreading around the world, a coronavirus called Corona-19. That day, I decided to keep my children at home from school, away from what would have been their last day of school as they had known it to be. As the days went on, the world was literally changing before our eyes. Hundreds and then quickly thousands of people were hospitalized without certainty of treatment or recovery. Suddenly, governments and businesses were intending preventive measures and making announcements that prioritized human life above business as usual, with recommendations that became mandates for people to stay home and safe. Although the spread of the COVID-19 illness, officially declared a global pandemic, was concerning, as I watched what was unfolding, it seemed this description and our collective response to it was coming from a greater awareness of our very interconnectedness to each other. The fact that, the fact that, sorry, I lost my spot. The fact that one person's suffering could spread and generate another person's illness in another beckoned questions about how we might live with care and consideration of others. Here we go. The fact that one person's suffering could spread and generate another person's illness in another beckoned questions about how we might live with care and consideration of others. 1 week into the lockdown, I awoke from a dream in the middle of the night with a fragment of a poem in my mind. I rushed downstairs to capture the words. Elder Exodus. Elder Exodus played over and over in my mind. I tried to stop myself from trying to interpret what was coming through. And then finally, after the muse had had her way with me, I read what had written me and wept. Elder Exodus. Swiftly, one by one, they join spiritual hands, letting go of earthly ones, making a mark and point on history. elders signing their collective soul's contract, beckoning those of us remaining with knowable and actionable wisdom. Their sacrifice, a radical gift, that we may wake up to life in love and giving, beyond fear and greed, to prioritize creativity and healing, beyond destruction and melody. If you have a candle nearby, I invite you to pick it up now, and we're going to light a candle together. And as we light this candle, I want to honor the 6,234,326 known deaths of COVID. I want to honor the 507,402,133 known and recorded cases of COVID, and honor the 459,800,172 recovered people from COVID. We hold this flame and honor all of the lives lost, all of the lives impacted, and all of us around the world. Over the next couple of weeks, the news reported climbing numbers of COVID cases, numbers representing unnamed suffering people without enough equipment to support, numbers of unnamed helpers who were doing everything they could to save people. So many people dying, some alone, not because of a failed medical system, but because we as a world had never fully accepted or operated that this situation might happen. I, like most people, was processing and preparing as best as I could for what the lockdown and COVID prevention might mean to my family's daily life. It was painful to watch my daughter's dreams for her high school senior year dissolving. Traditions like prom and that pinnacle moment for many teenagers of the Western world, high school graduation, rites of passage she had anticipated all her life, now seemed unsafe. These moments were replaced with loving and creative safe distance events by concerned teachers and parents that came up with alternative and safe distance experiences using Zoom. My daughter's high school even rented a full drive-in movie theater for graduation, which, while different, was equally special, with excited parents beeping car horns and cheering when their senior had their name called and photo flashed on the giant outdoor screen. This was incredibly thoughtful and clever, and it was so different. The dismay of life interrupted on a global scale was alarming. Even with mask requirements, 6 foot distancing floor stickers, and mandatory quarantining when people had cold symptoms, many people were not going to risk going out or going shopping. I did some soul searching around this, asking myself, what was mine to do during this time of uncertainty? I myself have a history of a wonky immune system, most notably 7 consecutive years when my body experienced autoimmune attack, rendering me a shell of Beckiness you see before you right now. My illness taught me many things, including that I could lose all of my beliefs about life and the world and come back with an even greater sense of purpose and joy than I could have ever imagined. For this I am grateful. Suddenly, the disarray and hell I personally endured was now at work through a global pandemic. I could parallel what happened to me personally with the collapses of so many systems and businesses. A worldwide alchemical process was creating systems collapse. Many businesses were forced to reinvent themselves with COVID contagion in mind immediately and usefully, or face going out of business. I remember, let's see if this will work. Is it back to working now, Bob? I remember one local family-owned and operated restaurant called Milton's. They made a bold move for kindness and generosity. For customers encountering financial hardship and unable to pay, they gave food out. It was so inspiring to see how individuals and businesses were asking how they might create solutions to so many of the problems caused by not business as usual. I myself, what was I afraid of? I asked myself. The answer initially was that I would contract the illness and develop a long-haul case because of my past history with illness. I suspected I was somehow at greater risk than others. I played it out and realized that what I truly had fear of was dying from COVID and leaving my husband and children. That was the worst thing that could happen to me, but that I realized if I died in service to something, or actually in service to someone else, then I was willing to die by that. I decided that if I died because I was helping people with their shopping or doorway visits to keep them safe, that this was a risk I was willing to take because it meant that I would go out loving. Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, "As soon as there is life, there is danger." As the days and weeks passed, more and more people became ill, and the numbers of cases and deaths and recoveries continued to climb. There was so much confusion, so many conflicting messages about the illness and how to be safe. I decided I was going to paint my front door with hope, a sentiment I wanted to affirm to myself and my neighbors. While my 10-year-old son, he was 10 at the time, he's 12 now, my 10-year-old son chalked our driveway expressing his own state of mind. All around the world, people were forming opinions and organizing around them. And April Fool's Day at our house was no joke. That's streamers that you see on our toilet roll. We literally, around the world, were counting squares of toilet paper for rations. And then I remember a trip to a wholesale club found me in the toilet paper aisle. My masked jaw dropped when I saw what was once a completely empty aisle, now filled. Toilet paper delight. I went quickly from delight to deep contemplation and then conundrum, another choice. I stood there looking at the two different colored toilet papers, wondering, how could it be that toilet paper now offered a subliminal political commentary? Divisions everywhere. But one thing many of us did agree with was the amount of sage that we needed. For those of us who use plant medicine, how much sage we needed for 2020 and 2021 and 2022 at that, I would say. So I send my gratitude to the plant spirits. I am a youth director at my church, and for over a year, we held weekly Zoom calls with the children of our fellowship. The first time we Zoomed, hang on, I need to, oh, a second. I'm switching my thing here. Hang on. The first time that we Zoomed, we looked at each other in a completely different way. Not in the church's classroom, but now video conferencing from our homes. The children, this is back in April of 2020, the children actually taught me my very first Zoom tech skill, how to turn my video upside down. And there we were, not only connecting with each other in a different way, but actually looking at each other upside down, looking at the world in a completely different way. Little did I know that that would become one of my first of many Zoom skills. The children are some of my wisest teachers. They got me thinking about the notion of looking at things differently. Specifically, the COVID map that was popping up everywhere on the news and social media. You remember the one with the red dots that was showing the sprawl of COVID spreading around the globe? It was harrowing, and I remember every time I saw it, I would feel so triggered and stressed. And it just knowing that those red dots represented actual human beings. In Buddhism, there is a Sanskrit word, karuna. Make sure you can see this. Karuna. Karuna means compassion and self-compassion. I began looking at corona maps through the eyes of karuna. I could now see not only the people who were suffering with COVID, but I could also see the people, the hearts and hands, taking unprecedented, massive, compassionate actions towards helping those who were sick. I recognize there are literally billions of us humans responding in kindness and love, in karuna. So many of us are choosing actions that place the needs of others ahead of our individual wants and needs. So many of us are doing things to reduce the suffering of others. It's beautiful. The pandemic is teaching me that the only two things I can control is one, where I place my awareness and my attention, my presence, and two, how and if I respond to what I put my attention upon. I ask myself often, how am I responding in my body? Do I tighten up and nearly stop breathing? Or do I shift my focus inside to experience my breath, my feelings, allow my sadness and grief, and also be open to recognizing how right now, simultaneously, the earth, she continues to rotate on her steadfast axis, supporting all of us and everything upon her. I cannot control the actions of others, but I can decide where I focus my attention and how and if I choose to actively respond. In 2020, with all of that news, I began getting heart palpitations. I realized they were due to my insatiable need to watch the network news. I decided to dramatically reduce my news intake, not because I didn't care, but because I realized I now cared more than ever. Turning off the news was what self-care and sacred kindness looked like for me. That time affords me more presence with my children and my work, the work that I actively choose. Limiting my intake of news means I have more to give because I'm caring for myself. I created an open space to ask myself, how can I show up and use my possible gifts in service to this great sadness, this great grief and suffering of people represented by all the stories being reported in the news? How can I give and act from a place of love for my community, my neighbors, my town, and you beautiful humans here with me today in this Zoom room and watching online? Because of the magnetic pull of World Unity Week, many of us met, and the magnetic pull of feeling pulled into interfaith ministry. World Unity Week led me to Bob and Noel and so many other of what I call our world's superheroes who believe, as I do, there is a better way of being human. Love. Incredibly, my renunciation of the news media has now led me to co-create with many of you what I call the new media, collaborative experiential media, like co-creators convergence, where we are in Zoom rooms hearing each other's stories and often giving opportunities to people less typically represented in old story media. Now I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'd like to invite you to turn on your videos as you choose in our room and invite your 2 or 3 to hear from 2 or 3 people here, any reflections or any feelings that have come up in this first part. And after we do our share, then we'll move on to the goddesses Corona, my Sansara, and the Corona goddess. But are there any comments or reflections in the Zoom room? You can turn on your video, I believe. Hang on, we'll turn that on so you can now you can turn on your video. And we'd love to hear from a couple of you. You can raise your carbon hand, your virtual hand, if you choose to, or you can just wave at Bob and I. Are there any thoughts or anything? Annie, hi Annie.
Well, I so appreciate that reflection, Becky. Wow. It's like, what you feel like subconsciously you were living and feeling, that I've never thought to express it. So it just really was so moving to listen to you review it that way. And I wanted to share, you mentioned a little bit about the kids that you were meeting with, the young people. And I really, I work with young children. I've worked with young children for a really long time, and preschoolers. And one of my 5-year-olds, the week before our shutdown, which was on the 13th of March, she gifted me. Now, the children make a lot of things in the Montessori classroom where I work, but they rarely give me something, but they do, here and there. And she gifted me 2 things in the last couple of weeks before our lockdown. And I just have to share them with you because I feel like children recognize. And these 2 gifts, as soon as this all came through, I just went, wow, she had like an awareness. So here's the first little thing. I don't know. Let's see if you can see it. It's always so hard on. So it's a crown. It's a crown.
Oh.
It's actually a crown, and it's a little pillow that she made.
Oh.
So that was one thing. And then she also did, they make these geometric designs in Montessori. And so this one, as soon as I started seeing the images of coronavirus, I went, oh my gosh. And if you look at it, it's got flowers, like she made flowers out of this. I mean, it's just the colors and everything just
wow.
so,
Wow.
Yeah,
like intuitively, the crown and the corona.
that's it.
And wow, wow.
I just felt visually and experientially that expresses what you're sharing here, Becky.
Thank
So
you so much, Annie. Thank you. So appreciate that.
thank you, Becky.
Go
Hi,
ahead, Dr.
Pamela.
Pamela. Yeah.
Hi, I would just like to say how powerful it is to hear from you and you, Annie, about the impact of like art and music and poetry and all of those things during times of great stress like we have experienced, that you can't just intellectualize about things like this, but art and music, they take us beyond to a place where we can find great healing. Perhaps it touches our souls in a way that we needed so desperately during these challenging times. And so sharing that was just really beautiful. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Pamela. We have time for one other share in our room. Is there anyone else who'd like to share a reflection before we move on?
I'll jump in here, Becky. It was your poem
Yeah.
about the
Wow.
elder exodus
Wow.
that just,
Mm.
she's not going to do any more, is she? It was just,
That poem, and it was like the early weeks. It was like maybe
Wow.
Gail is here. She might even remember them. It was in March that poem and those words, and it was like it was like it was telling me this was coming, and I just thank you, Noelle. Thank you for
Yeah.
honoring that. It
Good.
didn't feel like mine. It was I literally felt like some of the things that have written through me, that it was just here we go. Here it is.
right.
Let's
That
take it.
was
So,
so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. That
Yeah.
was,
thank you. Thank you.
that just teared me up right there.
Oh.
So
Hmm.
thank
Well,
you so
thank you
much.
all for your shares. We're gonna have more time to share, and so I'm going to hang on. We'll do this here, and we'll come back and have more shares. But I want to share. So the title of this program is Dancing with the Corona Goddess, and I haven't been very well this week, and my home test for COVID came back negative. I did have COVID 2 months ago, which you'll hear more about in the third half here. But when I wasn't well, I felt like I just realized that I really needed to make sure that I was humble to all germs, especially as I'm intending to honor goddess energy with what I'm sharing with you all. And I also think that goddesses have a sense of humor, because I was poorly and it's been a bit of a challenging couple of days to bring this vision into a solid form. I feel sometimes like the nutty professor, where that archetype of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I just have so many ideas, and it's really hard to focus. But I'm grateful that that this whole experience has come together, and I'm grateful that you've joined me here in the Zoom room so that I can share. So I'm going to hang on. Let me go to my next. Make sure. Okay, here we go. So this is part 2. The goddess Corona, Mai, and Sansara, the goddess of pandemics. And now we will open our hearts and our awareness to experience a few stories from the East about the goddess, specifically the Corona goddess, Corona Mai, and Sansara. During 2020 and my most recent research, I came across various articles about worship of such goddesses. Right now, I ask for their blessing as I share what some people in India and the Himalayas practice and believe. I offer these stories intending no harm. I offer them with reverence and respect of the cultural diversities and differences depicted in the photos and the videos that I'm about to share. I wish many blessings of love, peace, and joy to all that are represented in the visual imagery that I'm about to share. So our first story, this is a video from India's Goddesses of Contagion, about India's Goddesses of Contagion, and it explains this religious concept. This video was created by The Conversation from an article by Tulasi Srinivas, a professor of anthropology, religion, and transnation studies at Emerson College. So enjoy, it's just a couple of minutes long.
For centuries, Hindus in India have turned to the goddesses of contagion, known collectively as Amman or the Divine Mother, for help. During the current pandemic, these goddesses are being called on yet again. As a cultural anthropologist who studies religion, I have seen small shrines dedicated to these goddesses all over India. These contagion goddesses act as celestial epidemiologists. They protect against sickness and cure the ill, but if angered, they can also inflict disease. The first contagion goddess is a demon-turned-goddess, Hariti, who was worshipped during the Justinian plague of Rome in 542 AD. It traveled to India via trade routes and killed between 25 to 100 million people. 19th century British colonial documents record waves of illness and death that struck my hometown of Bangalore, and the desperate pleas to a contagion goddess known as Plague Amma. In South India, the premier contagion goddess is the scimitar-wielding Mariamman, who slays the demons of virulence and illness. In the north, she is called Shitala, or the Cold One. But with advances in modern medicine, traditional epidemics have died down. As a result, healing rituals have become less relevant. But yet the goddesses live on. A new goddess of contagion named AIDS Amma was created in 1997 by a science teacher in a village outside Bangalore. Worshippers at her temple were schooled in prophylactic measures to prevent AIDS. A Mariamman shrine near a traffic roundabout in Bangalore was transformed into a guardian against road accidents. In recent days, as India has eased the lockdown, the number of COVID-19 cases is rising. With no known cure, no viable vaccine, and failing social distancing measures, we may need the goddess of contagion now more than ever before.
And now we're going to travel to the Himalayas to learn about a ritual in Nepal honoring the goddess Sansara, who is the goddess of pandemics. And this is actually, they're actually showing you their ritual that they did at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic.
कोरोना संक्रमित देशहरूबाट नेपाल फिर्ता भएका सबैलाई क्वारेन्टाइनमा बस्नु भनेर सबैलाई नेपाल सरकारबाट आह्वान गरिएको छ। विश्वको विभिन्न देशबाट भ्रमण गरेर आउँदाखेरि बाटोमा, एयरपोर्टमा र प्लेनमा संक्रमित व्यक्तिसँग कन्ट्याक्ट भएको हुन सक्छ र त्यसैबाट रोग पनि सरेको हुन सक्छ। साइकोलोजिकल स्ट्रेस हुन सक्ने र यो स्ट्रेसलाई कम गराउनलाई उपायहरू पनि छन्, जस्तै आफ्नो नियमित रूपमा व्यायाम गर्ने।
pisang kalambang le chai संसारी सार्ने चलन हाम्रो परम्परा हो बा अनि त्यही संसारी हो कि जस्तो लाग्छ संसारीले पनि रुगा मार्की नै लाग्छ कोरोना भाइरस पनि रुगा मार्की नै हो हामीले लामबटे हामी दुईजनाले चाहिँ सबै गाउँले सार्ने सल्लाह गरेको
कोरोना भाइरसको बारेमा चाहिँ मैले सुनेको कुरा साह्रै अब याद भएन मैले बुझ्नु खोजेको चाहिँ त्यो संसारीको व्यथा बनेको ज्वरो आउने टाउको दुख्ने रिङ्गटा गुमाउने अनि छेर्ने खोक्ने त्यतैबाट भाइरस उफ्रिन्छ त्यो म आफू पनि बोको छु त्यही भएर मैले यो पुज्नु पनि थालेको हो किनभने उहिलेदेखि त्यही पुर्खाले भनेको कुरा त्यही थियो र उहिलेदेखि सानो पालादेखि मनाइ ल्याएको हाम्रो नेपालमा
अहिले ठाउँमा आएको छैन तर आइ नपुगे पनि लागिसकेर औषधि गर्न भन्दा नलागिकन उपाय गर्ने विचार गरेको बा कहिलेकाहीँ रोक्न सकिन्छ कि धेरै संसारीसँग पनि भर माग्दै सबै गर्ने हो हस्पिटल पनि जाने हो संसारी पनि पूजा लाउने हो हान बालबच्चा परमेश्वरा चौपया धौपयालाई परमेश्वरा छेर्ने ढक्ने उपर तल्ली खोकी चलाउने परमेश्वरा सह्या गरिदेऊ शीतल गरिदेऊ चाहिँ काले मान्छे भनिकन परमेश्वरा आज परमेश्वरा सबै परमेश्वरा सिरु गौरी गाईको दुध दिइकन परमेश्वरा आज परमेश्वरा गालचित्त जम्मा भनिकन परमेश्वरा सबै उन्दान सुन्दान दिएको छ परमेश्वरा सत्ता बिउ पल्ला बिउ जोराइकन परमेश्वरा जहान बालबच्चाको परमेश्वरा तिम्रो दिनभर घरिकन परमेश्वरा गाउँ गुरेटोबाट पनि परमेश्वरा रसोदान दिनेछ परमेश्वरा सहरी जानु परमेश्वरा तहरी जानु परमेश्वरा
And so that video, it's about 18 minutes, and at some point I'll put the link in the chat. If you want to watch the entire piece, it's really a beautifully composed piece. Was created by Gregoire Schlemmer, who is an ethnologist and conducts research with the IRD, which is the Institut des Recherches pour le Développement. And that was in Nepal. So now I'm going to share my screen again, this time in a different way. Hang on. I found this image through my initial curiosity about the goddesses of contagion. This is a painting that I found online that is actually modeled on another famous Indian image that some of us may know, Mother India, and the goddess of many arms. And this is called by the artist Sandhya Kumari, Coronavirus Mardini. And so just holding space for the energy of this powerful goddess. The next slide that I'm going to share, this I found through Reuters, through their newswire, and this is in Lucknow, India. And I'm just going to share the description that was with the release on Reuters. Indian villagers have erected a shrine to Goddess Corona and are offering her prayers in the hope that divine intervention can banish the deadly virus. Devotees in the Shuklapura village in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh have been offering prayers, holy water, and flowers at the bright yellow shrine where they have placed their idol, Corona Mata. One of the villagers says, maybe with her blessings, the villagers, our village, and everyone else will get some relief. And in this next image, this I found on a website, a publication called The Hindu, and the essay or the article is called How a Goddess Named Corona Devi Came to be Worshipped in West Bengal. And again, this is an extract from the essay that I found online. And if anybody wants any of these links, I'm happy to share them. If I don't get to sharing them today, you can email me at becky@joyfuel.org. A group of women from Asansol in West Bengal are fighting the pandemic with incense, mochichor, ladus, and jaggery. While the world is grappling with COVID-19 pandemic, a small group of women from a village in West Bengal have decided to fight in their own way. It all began at Asansol city's Nichupara Basti, where they got together to appease Corona Mai, or Corona Goddess. They did so in all good faith. A small puja was arranged on the banks of Chinnamasta Pond in the area. Women from various age groups gathered at 8 a.m. and they did rituals for an hour. They sang songs and mantras and they made their way to the spot. Earlier in the day, people in the settlement requested that every woman there join in, and they sat on the grassy floor in a row and placed a line of flowers in front of them. Incense sticks were lit. Fruits and vegetables, ghee and jaggery were offered to the Devi. Said 23-year-old Nita Das, a local resident, "We hope that Corona Devi ensures that the virus leaves us forever." The women even made motichur lados for the goddess, which is they're round balls that are made by hand with different types of flour and sugar. They're sweet. They carved out portions of the soil and placed all the offerings inside and covered it. They chanted prayers as they did so. The atmosphere was heavy with the smell of incense and flowers. Their eyes were closed in prayerful concentration, and mantras were in the air. The mantras, "Our offerings and chants will win us some respite from the virus," said Nita. At the puja, there were women in their early 20s as well as those as old as 75. Many of them were daily wagers and spent about 500 rupees maybe on buying, I don't know what Indian currency is, but 500 in Indian currency buying the material for the rituals alone. According to them, the coronavirus is a creation of Shitala Devi, whom some cultures consider the goddess of relief. They pray to her to be cured of diseases such as smallpox and measles. "We have decided to worship Corona Devi every Monday and Friday till she becomes satisfied," said 56-year-old Sabita as she lit an incense stick. And what does Corona Devi look like? To the women of Nichupara Basti, she is formless. She can be the wind that rattles their tile-roofed houses at night, the sun, the water in the pond nearby. Now we'll just take a moment to presence ourselves and pause in reflection. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite you all to turn your videos on again, those of you who'd like to potentially share any reflections. We have time for 2 or 3 voices to be brought into the room to reflect on what we just experienced. Hello, Patricia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Becky. You have shared your personal experience, and especially that you work with children and teaching them through this process, the creativity that's available to us through art and music and poetry and so on. That's the creative imagination. And in my language from the indigenous lens, I'm using the word reframe, and that I see that from a sickness to wellness restoration is out of that into wellness restoration. This process is a worldwide way of intending and visualizing and then dialoguing, speaking about it, which you are now sharing your own story in order to manifest wellness. And also very briefly, our own American Indian tribal healers also, we lost many of them, many with all their knowledge. That's a very sad thing to say and to talk up to tell you. And however, there were people who went to the sacred places at the mountain, or sacred mountains, and determined that it's this concept of the hunger, poverty, sickness, this in particular is hunger, poverty, sickness, and premature death, like war and genocide and so on, accidents and so on. They're the responsibility of male life path as a protector provider to ensure that that is not manifested on the earth. That's the divine masculine task, and female is life giver and nurturer. And so that healthy helping teamwork for ensuring that there is no hunger, poverty, sickness, and premature death. We must affirm the wellness restoration through it, yes, a reframe process in which then we are putting into language, into symbols, into rituals, into ceremonies, into ways that we are all initiating from within us this way of healing and calling upon those names that we know in our language and culture that initiates a healing for the whole planet and a learning for the whole planet to wake up to caring for ourselves and caring for our family and our communities, our society. And yet we're now in another crisis, which we must all do the same thing. We must all mobilize and inspire and motivate each other. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to say that to you. I'm so grateful for your work with children. It's very powerful for all to learn together and show the children how to accomplish this in order that we're not dealing with the fear of destructive and death producing decisions and those outcomes, which are the consequence of our past generations.
Thank you so much, Grandmother. It is through you that I learned of Creator's breath, through our friend John Raymer, who you talked about Creator's breath that helped him so much. And I just am so grateful to you for all the things that you've taught me over the last 2 years and for your beautiful work. Let me just hold this space this presence for you and all of the people that you're connected with who have suffered and who have died. Mm. 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 Thank you. Mm. Is there anyone else in the Zoom room who'd like to share a reflection? Hi, Noelle. Are you mutiful? Are you muted?
Mike.
Okay. What I have really enjoyed about this presentation, the heart of it is just so beautiful. But, looking at, when you point towards a creative, it just takes away so much of the fear when you can use your mind for something other than, I guess I'm like you, that I've stepped away from the news a lot, where I always was like, always had to know what was going on and whatever. And I just have been doing much more creative things. And, it's just so much, when we are creative beings. And when we just say, no, I'm not going to be in your box. I'm not going to take down the fences, take down I want to see Linda DeHart here. I want to fly my flag. And, I want to be able to. And so we have been involved in so many more things. You look at some of the gifts of COVID, like we used to have this call once a month. When COVID came and we knew there was more call for community, we started doing it weekly. And then it was so successful weekly that we added a first Saturday of the month. And as we do that, we're doing it, as you know, it's kind of like a pay it forward, where we have one guest and then they suggest another guest. And so our network, not that we have to be network, but the ideas and all the other expressions we have learned about and the friendships we have made. We've had Annie Spade on a couple times, and grandmother Patricia on, and Karen Trujillo on, and it's just been wonderful that they bring more people to the watering hole where we can have conversation and get away from the fear and just explore together and wonder at what each other of us are doing. And
it's such a different
contribute as we
energy.
can. Huh?
It's such a different energy, that
Yeah.
that energy.
And and like you said, we met through the World Unity Week, and we never participated in that, and the Peace and Unity Week, and the Martin Luther King, and the Beloved, goes on and on. So many other ways for us to connect. And I've learned a little. I don't know how to go upside down on Zoom yet, so you have to teach me that. But
We used the expression "the world's upside down" many times in the last 2 years when we were watching the news. And
Right,
so good to
right.
know that the
And
kids,
also from Hamilton, the world turned upside down.
do
yeah,
it literally.
so I just want to thank you for pointing us. And now I even have more ways to think about this whole Corona thing.
Mm.
So.
Well, thank
So
you.
Patricia says fear is a call for love, and they cannot coexist. Choose
Yes.
love and life.
Oh, beautiful.
And
Beautiful.
Annie says we don't need good news because we have a calling. It is a privilege to be living in these times. Quoting Joanna Macy.
Indeed.
Beautiful.
Indeed. Thank
And
you.
for those, I just would say a prayer though, for those of us who have forgotten or have not yet discovered what our calling is, our pulling, our gift is to give. I just honor you and say that if you don't know, just follow the thing that you're curious about that brings you joy and curiosity and some challenge too. It's not all joy, but just to trust that if you don't know what that is, to trust you're leaning towards something that makes you feel curious and joyful and challenged, and just start reading things about it, or I would say Googling, but I don't know. Googling, maybe YouTube is a buffer. You just see something, read about things, get some old fashioned books. I love books. So we are going to go to our third and final part. And then after this sharing, I'm going to share some more of my personal story. We are going to have a creative exercise. And I hope that we'll have time to have your voices come into the room again. So one moment, let me share part 3. Here we go. Oh. And so hang on. So we're in part 3, which is my own dance with the goddess Corona. Everything happens for a reason that I make up. Said that before. Now I shared in the very beginning of really the first 6 months really of what was unfolding with COVID. And in this year, earlier this year, my family contracted COVID. My father was so ill that he required hospitalization. And the hospital allowed 1 visitor per patient. So for 15 days, I was blessed to visit with my dad wearing PPE, which stands for personal protective equipment, that every time I went to the COVID section of the hospital, I had a new appreciation for what all of the care workers were going through, because I was only there for a couple of hours a day, but the marks that the PPE left on my face, I just sent so much gratitude and still send gratitude for what all of our care workers do in hospitals and in other care facilities. The hospital allowed 1 visitor per patient. So for 15 days, I was with my dad, and during his hospitalization, there was an orchid that my best friend had given me a year and a half ago for my 50th birthday that had bloomed for the first time since I had received it. Watching this little life blossom over the days that my dad was in the hospital, and it's still blossoming now a couple of months later, learning from the tight buds, their fragility, their dependency on me for water and adequate life, was a beautiful testament to life's requirements. I'm so grateful to share that my dad was released from hospital. At the time when he was released, he needed supplemental oxygen, and now he no longer needs that. My family and I are so grateful to all of the medical staff and the physical therapy people who've helped my dad since his release, for their compassionate actions and support of my dad and his healing, and thousands of other people. 4 days after my dad's hospital discharge, I awoke feeling dreadful. I tested positive for COVID rather quickly and stayed in bed for several days with severe exhaustion. I ran a fever for a couple of days, and I remember thinking at the time, it's my turn now to dance with the goddess Corona. One day that I was ill, I could not stop crying. It was a painful and powerful experience. It's hard to explain, but this infinity-sized image in my mind of a goddess crying for the world, and tears just unceasing streamed down my face. I could literally feel the COVID in me, and I began thinking and feeling for all the other people around the world who had COVID simultaneously with me at that very moment. I wished out loud a prayer that those of us with COVID right then would somehow reduce the amount of COVID being spread in the world, that fewer and fewer people would suffer as dramatically as had suffered the past 2 years. I prayed and wept, and then I slept. I remembered telling my dad that he was the one to determine what having COVID would mean to him and no one else. Now it was my turn with Corona to create the meaning of the dance. And you can see these statistics here taken from that Worldometer website that showed the numbers of cases. And when I was sick, there were actually more cases on record over that 1 month period between January and February and tapering down in March than in any time in the pandemic. There was just such a rise in the amount of cases. And so I just honor the numbers of the humans and beyond the numbers, because I know these numbers can't be down to the right number. I stayed in bed and I just decided that, hang on, turn my video back on. I decided that despite the headache, unless my fever went above 101, I would not take fever-reducing medication. And that may be why I had so many copious images in my head, which I jotted down. I stayed in bed, and that was my Mookie. And I don't know if you can see the St. Francis book and my notebook and coloring things. The first quote, it wasn't really a quote, it was just like a fragment that came to me. The first thing that came to me was this one. We don't need to have COVID to heal from it. And I reflected on this. And I really believe that this sentiment is significant to us as a species. While not all of us have had COVID, not all of us have to get COVID in order to do things consciously to heal from it. There are things that we can do towards personal and global healing. We can cry and discover what is ours to feel from all of the sadnesses of our lives and in our world. And I acknowledge that our tears are sacred and they connect us. We literally are part of the waters of the world. We can put our bare feet upon the earth and reconnect with nature and the elements. We are part of nature. We are nature. And so now I'm going to invite you all to a creative exercise. I'm going to change my background for you all. And we're going to sit under a tree together. This creative exercise, I hope, will honor the breadth of emotions and changes the pandemic has brought to each of you. We're both going to lie beneath a tree together and reflect for a few minutes on what the pandemic, COVID, and perhaps the goddess Corona has meant to you. You can choose a couple of these questions. We're going to place them in the chat, but I'll read them. However many that resonate, and maybe these questions all resonate and maybe you'd like to take more time with them. What have you lost during the past 2 years? What are you grieving? What have you learned about yourself? What have you gained during the past 2 years? What do you know for sure? So I'm going to play a piece of music, and you're invited to look up in this tree with me and take a piece of paper, or if you don't like to write, you're welcome to color or draw, and just be with this tree and reflect on your journey the past 2 years. Now is a time for imagination, for reimagining systems that are collapsing, a beckoning collective human imagination and aspiration. We are rebuilding in greater alignment with the earth's turnings and woundings towards the principles that so many of us have been waiting to try. Principles of kindness and love for human evolution. Now is a time for us to reflect on things that were not working for us and to bring forth beautiful healing and restorative measures while caring for each other. Perhaps we can play and try to remember our dreams, our nightly ones and our lifelong awake ones too, and co-create the solutions that are coming into view. This is a time for teachers, musicians, and artists to step up into the work and joys that are calling us, these gifts, heeded or otherwise, to shine even brighter in the work we were born to do, to help each other make sense of our changing, hurting, and healing world. Now is a time for us to remember or to discover why we each were born during this unprecedented time on earth. Each of us has a gift to give, a gift we need in the mosaic of us. We are in this together. I believe in us. I believe in you. I believe in humans. I feel so grateful that we are here together right now, co-creating the next chain in human evolution towards truly becoming humankind. My personal dance with COVID, the Corona goddess, continues to teach me so many things, but perhaps the greatest gift are beckoning questions. How might I live in a way that doesn't impose my beliefs and opinions upon others as sentences, threats, requirements, expectations? How might I live in a way that imparts love and upliftment and honoring of the essence of our shared experiences of being human? How might I live in a way that elicits healing and change in myself and in others? In closing, I'd like to offer a poem that I wrote, that it wrote me about 6 years ago, that in contemplation of the pandemic may be a call for these times especially. It's called More Nothing. The world needs more nothing. Humans practicing the art of nothing, sacrificing our human attention, gifting our presence as present, finding joy in simply being, breathing consciously in and out, feeling hunger unfed, desires unmet, embracing suffering and feeling deeply till its release. Sacred nothing. Let me completely open to nothing, nothing and its complex simplicity. I shall look to the birds, the rocks, the water, the petals, the trees, to nature and the wind. Where on earth doesn't the wind blow? Let me seek and find in stillness, through deep loving presence and listening. Let me give over to wonder. Oh, the way the magnificent earth she turns. I start at me, one human in nothing, responding and giving my human power, my gift to nearly 8 billion humans, my most loving healing gift to Mother Earth and all of her sacred residents, the gift of my nothing. And for those of you who lit a candle, raise your candle and blow this out, but not the hope and the love and the light that is within each of us that we carry forward. Amen, Aho, Ashe, blessed be our woman. It is so. Thank you all so much for being here.
Hot. Wow.
Thank you so much.
Aho.
Becky.
Thank you so much, Becky. Our woman. What an amazing and sacred evening. Tears, reflections, laughter, co-creative thought, co-creative challenge.
Do we have time to invite any
Sure.
words from the room?
You bet. Absolutely. So I'm going to allow participants to start video, unmute yourself.
Yeah, put it in gallery view.
Going to go to gallery view here, and if anyone would like to share, give thanks, ask a question, pray deeply into the night, whatever calls you at the moment. What a pleasant.
Love more than nothing.
Yeah. Wow.
Pamela says, beautiful. Thank you, Becky. And Tex, I thank you, Becky, for your thoughtful, even soulful Corona review, encouraging each of us to reflect and articulate our own personal experience. And as Elder Patricia Ann Davis says, refrain for personal resilience and flourishment, for thrivability of community and of ecology. Mahalo, Bob and Noel and everyone for mindfully presencing here together in our co-creative presence. Thank you, Tex. Our Frenchman who's speaking Hawaiian, mahalo. It's been a beautiful evening.
One human race.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you for all the care you put in putting this together,
Yes.
Becky. So creative.
Very creative and
It was my joy. I'm so
exploration the
grateful.
world over, your preparation.
And Olivia says, thank you for the sacred time together, Becky, with love and appreciation. We also put in the chat, Becky is going to be ordained in a interfaith minister this June in New York City. And she's going to be able to attend, and we're gathering funds so that her family will also be able to attend. And Becky, all the work that she does, I don't know how she does it all, but she works in the gift economy. So if you are called to support Becky, I did put information in the chat, and you can also just go to her website, joyfuel.org. And we love you, Becky, and we're so grateful.
I love you. Thank you so much.
If anyone's unfamiliar with catching with the chat, because there were some other references there as well, down as if you were going to put a note in the chat, to the far right are 3 dots. Click on that. It says Save Chat, and that will save the chat onto your computer in a folder called Zoom with today's date on it. And,
there was one really beautiful resource that I found that I shared the video. I want to share 2 videos, actually, the links in the chat for you all.
Oh, wonderful.
And if you're watching online and you want these, I think we can put them in the Facebook live stream, but if you want them, just email me, becky@joyfuel.org. This one resource was just so fascinating about all of the different goddesses, so I'm going to pop that in the chat.
Who knew? I had not a
Yes.
clue.
Wow.
So
I know, contagion goddesses. And you know, the thing I was feeling earlier as I was holding the words contagion goddesses, that there are bad things that are contagious. There are also good things that are contagious too.
Indeed.
And
That's
so
right.
we have kindness contagion and love contagion. And so we thank the goddesses of contagion for those energies. So I'm going to put the other link to that film that I played, only a couple minutes of. That film is amazing. There is an animal that is harmed in that video, though, so I'll just give that as a trigger warning for those of you who would either skip over that bit, or I can, if you want to know where it is, I can tell you where it is if you'd rather not watch that. But it is part of their beliefs that they did this. But it's really an astonishing video showing these beautiful rites of rituals of the samsara goddess. So
Thank you for your invitation for all of us to reflect on what lost, what gained, what learned, and what we know. Really very, 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 very thoughtful.
Yeah, I wish we'd had time. If anybody wanted to share that before we close it, I would. I'd love to hear if anybody wants to share that. I know it's very personal. I was very like, wow, I'm really going there as I was writing this. Like, okay, well, you know, we all have stories. That's the beauty. We each have stories that deserve to be heard, just like you graced me with your beautiful listening, sacred listening.